Welcome everyone to the inaugural India Climate Dialogues hosted by the City Climate Alliance at the National Institute of Urban Affairs. The India Climate Dialogue is an ongoing series of dialogues with our Alliance network partners and cities, where together we will attempt to create meaningful and actionable conversations that will lead to climate action. The topic that we are discussing today is Decoding the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, the IPCC report for Indian cities. Let me give you a backgrounder to this whole topic. So it's just about a month left for the COP27 to happen in Egypt, where all climate leaders are going to come together. And cities are now trying to decipher where they stand on their greenhouse gas emissions chart, where they stand on, how they are doing in their whole climate actions. And they're all now stepping onto a path to create, concrete actions that need to be brought in to stay within the 1.5 degree limits, which have been agreed in the Paris conference. Earlier this year, the IPCC report had a clear message that it gave out to cities, that there is no time left. It's an emergency, and that the time to act is now. And this becomes even crucial for an urbanized India, where it contributes up to, cities contribute to up to 70% of India's GHG emissions. So we thought it's an opportune time to understand the whats and whys, but more importantly, to talk about the nuts and bolts, which is the hows and wheres of cities and how they should go forward on this entire challenge. Today's climate dialogue, we will try to discuss some actionable points for cities to move towards their climate goals. To discuss this, we have an exciting panel with us. We have Rijit Matthews, who's the Director, Integrated Urban Development at the World Resources Institute. We have Mr. Imani Kumar, the Director of ICLE South Asia. We have Ms. Divya Sharma, Executive Director of the Climate Group. I am your moderator, Saili Mankikar, Head of the City Climate Alliance at the National Institute of Urban Affairs. Before we start, let me invite our director, Mr. Hitesh Vaidya, to put forth his opening remarks on both the dialogue series and to set the tone for this dialogue. Over to you, Hitesh, sir.
We have three stalwarts here who are nudging not only the cities, but nudging center and state, all three stakeholders to start thinking about climate action. And I really would love, I'll continue hearing it and record my thing, but I just wanted to personally thank you for joining us. And this is the first dialogue. Idea of this dialogue, as we have been discussing, is while we have created a climate alliance, idea was how the climate alliance start really bringing up some of the larger issues on the platform, which then they can be deliberated upon. And also, we not only deliberate, but can come up with the new ideas, possible solutions, good practices, what are there. And above all, which again, I think Sally did talk about, is what action cities can do. And looking at particularly Indian federal structures or Indian empowerment of urban local bodies, is there a possibility for them to really take some action, like green CNG emissions, particularly coming from urban transport? What cities can do there? What do they have a mandate? If they have a mandate, do they have finances? So in that context, we need to really say what can be done at a local level, because while their issues are very, very large issues, and we all are talking about it, but what is that cities can actually work on it? And because right now we have a very sectoral approach also within the city. So within their sectoral approach, that climate action really fits in, and if it fits in, how is that really being funded? So these are my couple of things. I know we can talk about later. I don't want to stay, but I particularly think the 5 things which NIUA has been trying to do is one, and these are 5 challenges which I think we all are facing. Is one is, first is, where is the data on talking about climate? So let's look at the data and see how we can resolve that issue, because even though we already have done a climate assessment framework, now we are moving to an urban outcome framework. Uh, is it, how does that data becomes much more accessible to the cities to take action on it? Because data collecting and giving a performance in assessment is okay, but can cities make use of that data, and how best we can really make that available to cities, that they start appreciating that data. And also, I particularly think it's also a democratization of data is also needed to be thought about. Second is, we all talk about technologies, and you will know, you three of you know about it. Everybody has a different aspect on technology. What works, what does not work. What works in Singapore may not work in India. So how do you really look at it? What is my context, and doesn't get carried away with the great ideas which never really work. So how do you guide them in that perspective? I think that's a second area. Third area, which I think again, Siley talked about urban planning. We already talk about urban planning being a starting point for climate action. Now, right now, again, urban planning and climate, they are two different things when we actually talk about planning processes. How do you really build urban planning into the legislative framework or a planning framework when we are talking about climate action? And that need to be really thought of, because as a planning instrument, when we look at a master plan, the climate action is just one chapter, and that's like, how do you really integrate that? What type of frameworks, what type of mandates? Because, again, they are siloed approach. How do you break that siloed approach when it becomes to climate action? Then we are talking about right now climate action plan. It's nice to make a climate action plan. Again, what is their mandate, what they can do, what cannot be done, and how is that climate action plan is actually funded. And broadly, how is this, whatever we are doing gets contributed within the city climate action plan, get integrated with state action plan, and state action plan get into under this national action plan or NDCC. Where is that alignment? What are those indicators which NDCC are talking, and how are our climate action plan really contributing, not in terms of number, but in terms of processing, or in terms of things. But where is that? So cities start thinking that whatever I am doing is also getting contributed into a larger mandate of the nation, which nation has promised at the global level. And last, and that's my pet idea, is everybody talks about, we will be doing, and none of us have answers. Sometimes I really feel that the situation which we are in is the same situation which Arjuna was in a Mahabharata battle, where he's standing on the battlefield and he doesn't know where to shoot, why to shoot, and how to shoot. And he's asking Krishna, should I or should I not? And we are in that same confusion state at this moment of time. At least Arjuna was lucky that he had a Krishna with him. We are not that lucky enough. And I think our answers or our Gita will really come out with the deliberations and dialogues which we ourselves will do, and we'll know that, and we will, and these are going to be a sandbox of discussions where we will fail, and we will again emerge. Some new things will come up, and we should be ready to that challenges of failures which we want to really do. But I'll end it. Is like we all say, we all are in this whole this whole purpose of this is, there is a lot of misinformation, there is a lot of chaos, and this dialogue is to really get out of that misinformation, get out of this chaos, and give it a very, very concrete, very actionable thought process to cities, so they don't get into confused with the jargons of adaptation, mitigation, this, that, but get into these are the 5 actions which I can take within my legislative framework, and I can take it forward.
Thank you, sir, for setting the tone for this dialogue and this series. Let me now completely jump into this discussion. Let me start with Ms. Rijit Matthews. She leads the whole urban planning vertical at the WRI. And this report, the IPCC report, actually talks of better urban planning could lead to carbon reduction. So Rijit, could you tell us what steps should cities take to achieve resource efficient green growth through urban planning?
Thank you, Sally. And thank you, NIUA, for having us at this panel at your inaugural India Climate Dialogue. I'll actually refer to something Mr. Hitesh Vaidya talks about. I think he didn't mention it today, but he was talking about the kind of grammar and language we use around climate change, and how do people actually understand that. So I think to start off, we really need to look at de-jargonizing to be able to decarbonize. So that's really, at the center of a lot of issues, because climate change affects everyone. It might affect us variably, but it affects everyone. And we need all hands on deck to be able to, sort of look at climate positive action. And just related to the de-jargonizing bit, it's not so difficult to talk about climate change anymore. Yes, the IPCC report, like you mentioned, Sally, has come out. It is a scientific report. How do you then communicate that to the people? Today, it is not so difficult. If you look at, say, Delhi NCR, people understand what is air pollution. They understand the impact it has on people, their health, children under 5, their lung development. A lot of this is understood now and can be explained, because these are like actual real effects people see. Similarly, if you talk about, say, floods in cities, a Mumbaiker or a Chennaiite or somebody in Kochi, even Bangalore now, unfortunately, is able to understand that very well. So I think all of this, how we communicated, the fact that it is coming from, say, fossil fuel burning, the fact that patterns are changing in weather, all of this, precipitation levels, I think the whole IEC, something you're good at, Sally, the information, education, communication around climate change has to improve as a starting, sort of building block in our context. And coming to sort of the urban, planning implications of a report like the IPCC, at the end of the day, Indian cities, some of our major cities are along our coastline. We have to remember we have 7,500 kilometers of coastline. So these are very vulnerable areas, India especially, because flood, cyclone, storm surges, all of this is going to affect our coastlines, and we need to prepare, for such disasters, for such, impacts going forward. And these are also some of the most expensive, at the end of the day. There are various reports that have come out for India, whether it is, this UN ASCAP report that spoke about $87 billion that has been lost over time due to extreme events in India. We also have issues like the World Bank report talking about, various floods and other issues that we face, mostly monsoonal floods, that is again caused about 11.8 million people have been affected by such events. So I think these are very real. Many reports, CEW also has brought out a report showing that about 27 of 35 states in India today are highly vulnerable to various, hydrometeorological disasters. And I think it's time to plan for it. Now, Mr. Hitesh Vaidya spoke about master plans and how there's a small chapter often dedicated, a few pages, to climate change. And I think one way forward really is to have a revamped, reimagined city master plan. The reason I choose this sort of document, other than being a spatial planner myself, is at the end of the day, this is one document that is mandated by acts. Town country planning acts mandate this. It is a legal statutory document. It holds in court. It is really that one document that can bring together, it's ideally a spatial document that brings together various sectors. And it is this plan that really needs to be, really revamped and reimagined, because whether it is, say, climate action plans. Now, today, there are climate action plans being made in cities. ICLE helps make them, GIZ, WRI, where I work, also prepares these plans. There are many organizations that come to make city climate action plans. But today, city climate action plans are not mandatory. We have national commitments, NDCs, we have state climate action plans, but the city caps are very often, by, say, sometimes a champion who comes in, political champion who comes in to do these plans, or even bureaucratically, say a municipal commissioner agrees, usually tying up with some sort of an international network, a knowledge agency to do these plans. But how much can they implement beyond that is a large question. As we know in our cities, at the end of the day, a municipal commissioner can take up a city climate action plan. But how much can he influence, say, a state decision or a national decision in, say, power generation? It typically doesn't fall within his jurisdiction. Whether the choices of, say, a coal versus renewable, there's only that much he can choose. Maybe a municipal commissioner in our context can look at, say, solar rooftop, which is under his control, building codes which are his control. So there are many things where, the nation, the state, and the city need to come together to help cities plan better. And if we have this revamped master plan, then the city climate action should flow into this master plan. Similarly, infrastructure plans. Today, we have very powerful state agencies, parastatals, that look into, say, metro line alignments and construction of the same, land agencies that can come and look at where housing comes up. These are housing boards, you have industrial area boards. There are too many players in cities without, a common platform. And hence this spatial plan can provide that platform to multiple agencies to come together. For this, of course, we need a lot of changes in our town country planning acts, in some of our policies, but to really enable this plan to be that negotiated plan across departments. Because today, like, Hitesh mentioned, it's an academic chapter. Sometimes it just comes into the plan. But how do we, action it? How do we bring in risk-informed infrastructure plans, low carbon, transport options? How do we look at various sources of energy? What is the pressure we are putting on state departments to say, can you give us renewable energy into the city? So I think all of this needs to come in through that spatial plan. That would be my, thank you.
Thank you, Rijit. Thank you very much to, for bringing this ahead. I think two very important takeaways from what you actually said, Rijit. And that is, one is about making things simple, de-jargonizing it. So that's the first takeaway. And second is using the existing statutory document to really work and kind of, integrating all the other things instead of, working it out the other way. Because the other way might be a difficult way, and yeah, that's a food for thought, and I think a great two takeaways that we can take forward. Also, you brought in thing that we'll be talking a little later on, synergies across governments and what are the jurisdictional issues also, and how do we look at them. So okay, here we'll just jump into the second question. And here I would like to bring Mr. Imani Kumar in. My question here is, I think while we are talking about de-jargonization, we are talking about statutory, plans, master plans. I think the thing that cities usually say that it's okay, you want us to do actions, but how do we measure stuff? How do we create this data? If I want, and you are actually working with so many cities on really doing these actionable plans. So what do you think, how should cities really approach climate action as such? Any short-term, long-term measures that you can suggest since you work so closely with them?
Thank you, Soili, and just want to congratulate NIUA under the leadership of Mr. Hitesh Vaidya and all your team members for bringing this climate dialogues. Which is, I think, is the need of the hour. Cities are really looking for the answers. I think maybe what we are going to say something now in this dialogue. And I just want to congratulate you and thank you all, Hitesh ji and Soili and all your team members for that. Just to take it forward where Hitesh ji has left and Rijit has actually clearly said that unless until you have a mandatory action mandatory for the city governments and the legal or something else, cities may not want to do it further on the climate change because they have their own issues every day to handle them. So how do we bring climate change? How do we mainstream climate change so that the cities can also do or address the climate change issues? I always use this example, which I started talking to the mayor of Bhubaneswar way back 20 years back, I will say, in 2001 and 2002. And still, I will say this example is still useful even today to take forward to mainstream the climate action. When I went to him and I asked him, sir, we want to help you out in reducing carbon emissions, and can we talk something on that? So he immediately said, Mr. Kumar, please don't waste your time and waste my time here because I have so many other things to do it. Thank you for your time and thanks for visiting my city. But I said immediately, sir, what is your electricity bill coming up? He said, some maybe thousands of rupees or lakhs of rupees. So, sir, can I reduce 10% of your electricity bill, which also has an impact on the climate change issues? Immediately, the mayor called his personal assistant. He said that, okay, this gentleman has come and he want to reduce my city electricity bill 10%. Please don't disturb me for next half an hour. And Mr. Kumar, now you have half an hour. You tell me what you can do for me. So I always see this as maybe if we can link it to the financial spending of the city government. If I can save something to the city government, because they are paying electricity bill for water supply, they are paying electricity bill for their street lighting, for their wastewater treatment plant, and a lot of other things for the buildings, what they have, and they have fuel consumption within the city governments. So if anything, if we can link it to their city activities, link it to their budgets, what they have right now, and if I can offer something which will also take forward or which will also have a byproduct, maybe I will call it, no, we shouldn't say that as a climate experts here. But if a city can implement those actions and if they can also reduce the the carbon emissions, that will be good. And that is how we should take it forward on that. So anything what they are doing, I think a lot of cities in the last 20 years now, they have changed their lighting from fluorescent, from all the CFLs to incandescent lamps and to LEDs now, I think the latest one, which almost all the cities in India have changed it thanks to EESL, thanks to Government of India's push. And also they have done it, all the cities have done it because they see that there is a reduction in their electricity bills and they can save some money on that. So which has a direct impact on the carbon emissions and emissions. So this is a quick win like which cities have started, but now all the cities have. Another example I just want to give you is city of Rajkot, like which they have used solar rooftop systems for their water supply system. For the entire water supply is now run through the solar based system, solar rooftop systems, which we have just showed them that the city can do this. Now the city wants to do it not just only for their water wastewater, they want to do it for other municipal infrastructure services. So can now showing one city doing that. And then thanks to NIUA, thanks to other smart cities initiatives, cities are now looking into these activities actually. So can I use renewable energy? I think Rijit also talked about to all their municipal infrastructure services on that. I just said that I'm getting late for this event. I'm just coming from a discussion on the e-mobility thing, which is where I have 17 cities starting. We have all other partners, WRI, C40, and other Government of India. I have 17 cities coming there and asking us if I have to change it to e-vehicles or e-buses in my city, what can I do? How can I do that? Actually, this is the discussion along with the state-run public transport authorities. We also have NITI Aayog. We also have Government of India. We also have original equipment manufacturing associations. People are also there on that. So how can I change my entire fleet? At least maybe I'm asking the city governments, your own fleet, if you can change them to electric fleets, like, okay, forget about the cities, citizens are doing that, but if you can do that, this thing on that. So that is another example. There are a lot of policies have come up at the national level, at the state level, and which they can take it forward on that. Maybe one more example, I just take it and maybe I will stop it. Maybe we can go and further have discussion. This is the other thing which is very much important for all the Indian cities, not just only Indian cities, maybe all over the world, is the solid waste management within the city government. And solid waste, like we have all the, we don't have even today, we don't have a sanitary landfill in any city in India, I will say, if I have to put it clearly under the quotes. Where is the sanitary landfill site? So we have only just dump sites. All these dump sites have methane coming out of those dump sites, which is 27 times more than the carbon emissions. So how do we handle the waste, solid waste, which you can reduce the carbon emissions, which also has a direct impact on the 1.5 degrees what IPCC is talking about this thing. So there are various ways. I know a lot of Indian cities under the Swachh Bharat mission are looking for segregating the waste. They're getting a lot of awards and other things. But if you can't even completely segregate, maybe can you do something else? Like, can we have, there are some other examples of waste to energy plants, but that is also because we have a mixed waste, we don't have segregated waste, so it's not really coming up. But maybe biomethanation plants, which are coming up very much in city. We have showed it in few cities like city of Udaipur, city of Coimbatore, Rajkot city, and city of other cities and other states are doing the biomethanation plants, which is like maybe come out with 2-ton decentralized biomethanation plant, come up with a 5-ton biomethanation plants, coming out with all the bulk waste generators, maybe apartment blocks, maybe restaurants, maybe hotels. If they can come together, put up a biomethanation plant and generate the electricity out of that from the gas and use it for your own purposes, or use it for parks, use it for street lighting, other things like that. So that's another simple example, a good example and cost-wise example. So cities can use it to take it forward on that. So there are ways to address the climate change issues. There are ways to reduce the carbon emissions. I know that if you can't measure, you can't monitor it, obviously. If you need to have the data with you, this thing. But what I'm suggesting it is, you don't have to come out with a complete carbon emission inventory of the entire, all the sectors. Start with one sector, start with waste, start with energy, start with transport maybe, and come out with action plan for that particular sector. Take forward that and go to the next sector on that. And my last point, I just want to add, sorry, this is on the budget. If cities can add some budget from their own budget sources. You do leakage, impacting leakage, you do energy audits for your this thing. So if you can add your own budget, and then you can look for state or national or an international sources of budget. Yeah, I'll just want to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Imani sir. I think in the last 5 minutes, you just rolled out so many examples and so many important ones, some low-hanging fruits, some which require more time. And I think what you said is a very good takeaway for us, which is for cities and for all of us here, is that you don't require that big money really to begin with. It could be a small contribution out of the existing money that could be put out as a start plug. That is one thing that I took from what you said. And I also think that the other thing that you said is it could be a smaller project that starts off, and then looking at that, you can build on it and then build something bigger. So I think that is a great approach that you have highlighted, which I think cities can take from. Let me now, move to the next question, and it's actually a takeoff from what Rijit was actually mentioning, and which I think I should direct to Ms. Divya Sharma, who is the executive director of the Climate Group, where they're working across the central government, state governments, and sub-regional governments, and with businesses, really. So that kind of a space. So I wanted to ask you, in several sectors, whether it's energy, transport, water management, climate actions cannot be initiated by cities alone. You need a synergy of the state and central government to really, bring effort into the policies and to aid change. So how do you think can city governance be strengthened, and how can permanent systems be brought in for this kind of effective and equitable climate governance? Over to you, Divya.
Thank you, Sally, and very pleased to be here and speaking at the same forum as Imani and Rijit. So quite an honor. So your question is very important. I think Rijit has spoken partly about what you have asked me already. So I'll move on from there. And I would say that urban development, or the face of Indian cities, if we look at it at the moment, we've come a long way. So Going a bit to the history, we've started with reform-led infrastructure financing for proper urban management and city development in the past, realizing that there is lack of capacity at the urban local bodies level and instituting some of those schemes at a central level, and those were, kind of adopted by state and cities. We came down then to provision of housing and basic services for urban poor, looking at the humane side of it, looking at the poverty reduction side of it. And then we also saw that time in urban development in India when we started speaking about smart cities, speaking about beyond mundane, and we looked at schemes like Amrit. And smart cities particularly I'm mentioning because it was a SPV-led mission, which kind of was instituted to see that the silos are broken, to see that there is sector-to-sector convergence that can happen, and to also see that there is public participation in the entire process. Because who are we planning these cities for? We're planning this for the people of the city, for the citizens. Are we supposed to look at governance systems, procurement processes, and other processes and contracts? Or are we have to look at what is the quality of life that we are providing to the citizen? What are the livelihood options? Why should a citizen live in a particular city? What does a city offer to them? How does it affect their life hour to hour, day-to-day basis? Now, these are very complex situations. What happened in this entire gamut of national level schemes, and Rijit spoke about her, what we did not really see was that some of these schemes were not fundamentally speaking to the existing policies and plans that were there at an urban level or a local level, if I may say that. And meanwhile, the complexities of an urban body in India or a cities in India was changing very rapidly. Urbanization process had become rapid, population increase had become rapid. And the last census has also said that it's not migration that is actually affecting as much the urbanization, but it is the change in small towns into bigger towns and villages into small towns. And that kind of change is happening, which is leading to the urbanization, which means that the sprawl is happening and a lot of ecological change is happening in and around the urban areas. Our cities are entering into the ecosystems around them. They are also affecting the interchange and the exchangeability of ecosystem services between urban areas, peri-urban areas, and villages surrounding them. So it's a huge, complex problem that we are talking about. And governance is at the center of it, because you've asked me about governance. Why do I say that? Because when we talk about cities and we talk about areas around city, particularly in the context of climate change, we are actually talking about adaptation. We are talking about disaster risk reduction. Now, some of the problems that have arisen that we want to adapt and that we want to, risk prone our cities is because of faulty urban planning practices, is because of the fact that we did not have a multi-level integrated governance model that could look at sector-to-sector convergence. What did we miss here? We missed the planning element of it. We missed the coordination element of it. We missed the finance element of it. And Imani was speaking about it just before me. And more so, we missed the human element of it. So what is the solution? I think the solution is not only to look at vertical integration, as you said, national, state, district, city level, maybe village level, down below as well, but also look at that urban areas are not confined to their political boundaries. There are transboundary effects and transboundary solutions that we will have to look at. So we are looking at vertical and we are looking at horizontal. And I think, cut my story short, a multi-level governance will have to be at all the 4 axes, X, Y, Z, and So I would like to stop here, but I think it was a great question, and I hope I was able to answer your query.
Divya, just an add-on question to that. Could you just elaborate a little bit, very little bit, on multi-level governance if you have to imagine it? And if, you know, the board was given in your hand and a chalk was there, how would you kind of imagine it at that level? Maybe with an example so that we understand it better.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you a very simple example, simple for everybody to understand. We have urban local bodies and they have a specific role to play. We have a municipal corporation that usually has a role to look at cleaning of sewers, for example, sweeping of streets, maintenance of city infrastructure, sometimes road development also. To that, we have development authorities that look at planning processes. Even if the cities who do not have development authorities, the secondary cities or tertiary cities, rely on town and country planning organizations for their development planning. Now, Richit was talking about master planning processes. She talked about infrastructure plans, she talked about master plans, and she talked about climate action plans. But we don't know who owns what, who owns which one of these. So I have done a lot of work with cities in India, preparing their climate action plans, preparing their adaptation plan, looking at hazards and vulnerabilities that were very typical to those cities. But when we go with these climate action plans to cities, we really could not find one entity that could actually implement those plans, which means we need multi-level, sectoral, as well as governance level practices inbuilt into this system, where we exactly know who will do what, because it's a complex system, as I said, and we have to look at sector to sector and governance to governance level implementation procedures, budgeting lines, and mandates to begin with.
Thank you, Divya. I think point taken. So how do we do it is maybe have horizontal and vertical structures like a mesh, but also sectoral within it, and some sort of a governance system. I think it organically is also emerging in some way because of these cross sections. But yes, there has to be a, I think, system to the whole madness of it, and that could be the way ahead. One other thing that I would like to kind of go to the next question, or to jump onto the next question, is through, you talked about ecological changes, and that's where I want to bring Rijit in. There is a lot of talk that is going on the whole NBS, that is the nature-based solution, climate resilient development. And the IPCC report really puts a huge premium on this. In fact, the NIUA, along with WRI, has also set up a nature-based solution forum. We have a national forum that we have set up for this. And this really directly, and what the IPCC report actually says is that this kind of development, which is climate resilient and nature-based, can impact lives and livelihood positively. So my question here is that, how do you think cities can actually use this kind of development, but also balance it out with social and economical challenges, because everything needs money? Over to you, Rijit.
Right, the big money question. But yeah, I mean, one is, just to start off with, nature-based solutions in many ways is just ensuring our development is sustainable. We're really looking at how to reverse some of the natural resource degradation that has happened, the biodiversity loss that has happened, and its implications, which are very visible in our urban areas. In fact, I remember the concept note that NIUA had sent is, spoke about 70% of our built infrastructure yet to come in. Now, that can be seen as a challenge, or it can be seen as an advantage as well, because the fact is, if we are yet to build all of this infrastructure, how do we build it in ways that it is risk informed, infrastructure that is risk informed, to be able to handle sort of all of the climate change, impacts that we're going to face. And we know that our cities, at the end of the day, concentrate infrastructure, people, GDP, and emissions. So, how do we bring sort of all of that together? And how our cities grow is very important. Here's where, recognizing nature is critical, because watershed management, for example, is a very critical aspect that a lot of our cities in their growth phases, whether it's Bangalore, Chennai, all of them are seeing the impact of not planning for these areas. If, for example, you have two water bodies and there's a channel that connects the two, the water channels, the valleys, drains, etc. If you don't recognize that it's a system that's in operation, and you actually build in these valleys, these are exactly the areas where floods are occurring, whether it's Chennai, Bangalore, other cities, etc. So watershed management, for example, is one of the critical watershed management. It's really preserving some of these systems goes a long way in terms of ensuring our cities are resilient tomorrow, whether it's in terms of excessive precipitation, storm surges, etc. Similarly, our coastal cities along coastline, whether it's say mangroves, they're very critical in terms of ensuring how do you handle storms and hurricanes later. It will reduce the impact if some of these systems are in place, natural systems. Similarly, whether it's say upstream forest management, forest restoration, really helping our cities in many ways. Some of this not recognized. I remember in 2005, the master plan of Bangalore was reviewed. I was a part of that consulting team, and you realize that it was never understood, that some of these systems need to be preserved. These are actually lands that people have legally built on, not even, not purposefully done in a wetland area. It's actually legal land. They've got construction permits. They've built there because the master plan itself never recognized that certain areas should be non-buildable. So I think a lot of this has come together much later. And I think, sort of understand compact growth. Like at the end of the day, once you preserve all of these systems, your growth itself will be compact. And you were asking me about the economic value of it. At the end of the day, if you build compactly, let's take the case of Mumbai, a city that, we both lived in. In a compact city, it is much easier to manage your resources. Whether it is, ensuring your tax base is more efficient, your taxations are better, service provision is better, and all of these savings can then go into other solutions. So, for example, Mumbai today has a very strong electric bus fleet. It has prepared its city climate action plan. It has, fiscal resources that it can use for better, management of, its vulnerabilities being a coastal city. So I think all of this comes together when you plan sustainably. It just has to be figured out better in our cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Rijit, for that response. I think a lot of food for thought there. And, you also mentioned like people many times in this, and, so that really takes me to my next question and to Mr. Kumar here, where I want to really, bring out an important, I think a flagship program that has been recently announced by our Prime Minister, which is the program called LIFE, which is Lifestyle for Environment, and the changes that people can bring. So, Mr. Kumar, I would like to bring you in here because you work so closely, and that, with cities, and this subject is definitely close to you, is the role of communities and individuals. And this role is so critical in co-creating local climate solutions in cities. So how do you think that cities can actually harness this potential the other way around and integrate people into climate action? So, considering that life is a big program that is coming up next year, and we are talking of lifestyle for environment, for lifestyle for change and environment. How do you think? What is the role that communities really play? What is the critical role, and how can cities also kind of absorb and co-create with people and communities?
Thank you for this question, and I will say completely I agree with the objective that unless until you bring the citizens into the climate action planning, I don't think we will achieve the 100% results. Cities can do, states can do something, or national government can propose something, but we need cities. Why I'm saying this is like everything what a citizen plans is also has a direct impact on the climate change issues on that. And I can even say that we talk about the developed countries have created a lot of issues, and we are the developing country and we should have something. But the common man on ground is going to face a lot of issues because of the climate change. It can be vulnerability, as what Rijit and Divya was talking about. It can be the heat which our cities are facing now. The citizen greenery, if you don't have trees, where will that person like on the road who is selling something on a bush cart will go and stand, like if it is rainy season or if it is heat, 45, 48 degrees centigrade. So you need greenery, you need a lot of plantation of trees and everything other than things. So what I suggest here is that, yes, we need to bring the citizens into your action planning. Simple example, maybe I will take it forward, like all the apartment people, if they can come together and can have a compost plant, actually segregate your waste and compost plant, which you are reducing your waste going to a landfill site at the city level on that. So this is a simple citizen movement which we used to have a lot of good stories, for example, in Chennai and Pune and other cities, but unfortunately we don't listen them now. We don't hear them from these cities. So that is simple example. So wherever we can bring the citizens into the city climate action planning, that I think we can have more results and we can achieve much more than what we are doing on that. The other example I can say that, and I think WRA and other people are also part of this, is also, can I stop taking my own vehicle and use a public transport? As simple as that. Like, actually, can the citizens come into picture and say that, okay, one day, I know some of the cities, I was involved discussions with Ahmedabad city. They said every Friday you should use only the public transport for all the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation employees. Thanks to the previous commissioner, I think he brought in this particular, and other cities. There are some, I think Pune I heard about, Nagpur I heard that. So one day all the municipal employees will use only public transport to reach their offices on that. And one day we have that, I think WRA scheme on with closing all the cars, a few streets, this thing. So every action by bringing citizens into that, cities can take it forward on that. And I just also want to add one more example. I think we have looked into is actually platforms which a city can create. Like we called it a rural-urban platform, rural and urban platform, both for, because what cities are doing, again, maybe if I to use the solid waste example, just city don't want to keep the waste in their city boundaries, but they're throwing it out onto this thing. And same for the water supply, maybe actually the issues. So what we have advised is that rural-urban platform, that is one created, and we have few city examples which they have used it in a very better way, bringing citizens on this platform, talking to them, and planning the climate actions on that. In our climate action planning process, we create two teams, actually, or two climate core team within the city government, and we also create a citizens core team, or a stakeholder core team, what we call it, the citizens, the transport department, the other department, as Divya was talking about. There are so many departments within the city need to come together and implement the climate action which we come out with on that. So I completely agree that citizens are important, and we need to take them on board if we want to succeed in climate action plan implementation of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Imani sir, for that very important input. And so I'd just like to bring in an observation here. I think there were several citizen movements that, and like you said, there were so many stories we used to hear about, right? So the ALM, that's the Advanced Locality Management System of Mumbai, actually started on the whole premise of waste management. And there was 600 odd ALMs actually working with the city government. And it was a huge movement, which has unfortunately died down today. Similarly, we saw the Bhagidari movement in Delhi also, which had picked up. So maybe it is time that we reformulate something which should be, and there are small things still existing, I think, but not at the level that they should be. So maybe it's time to reimagine the way we are really looking at people's movements with cities and, kind of chaining them with climate action, like you said. I think very valid point and a great takeaway for us in this discussion. Let me now go to my next question, which is again based on an important and a very, very important stakeholder, which is our businesses. And our businesses are very, very important here, where, like our people, of course, businesses also contribute to a lot of the emissions that happen in cities, but also looking the other way, they could be of great help to cities and to regional governments and sub-regional governments to solve a lot of their problems. Here, I would like to invite Ms. Divya Sharma to put in some thoughts here, because she works very, very closely through the climate group with businesses. And I think this is an important matchmaker that we need to bring into the whole conversation. So how do we do that, and how do cities approach businesses to work on climate action? Over to you, Divya.
Thank you, Sayali. So a question very close to my heart. So yes, we do work very closely with businesses. In fact, Climate Group works with two major stakeholders. One is subnational government and other is big corporates and businesses. Why we particularly work with businesses? Because businesses are systems with highest emissions, and you rightly pointed that out. They also have the power, the position, and means for greater action and with speed. And that is the recognition why we partner with businesses across sectors for them to take some of our ambitious targets and commitments. So we see at the core of our mission is commitment and targets. And the third part to this is accountability. So we not only give them targets and they take commitments and ambitious commitments, so to say, 100. So our campaigns are the 100s campaign. They are known as the 100s campaign, RE100, EP100, EV100, which means that the transition that somebody would like to take would be an absolute transition. There will be no in between, 0 to 100 by a target year. While doing so, we hold them accountable, but that does not mean that we police them. That means that we make sure that they understand the impact they are making, and we understand the impact that we are making through this process. And by doing so, we have also tried to do, and what we have tapped in the process, the positive benefit is building large as well as influential networks of like-minded businesses, corporates, and people running those businesses who can bring in speedy change, accelerated change. Because we are at the tipping point where we actually don't have time and we are running short of time. Therefore, we need these entities with highest emission, but also the clout and power to bring in change very quickly. The other thing is that when we work with government as well as businesses, what happens is that businesses can then inform policy. So what kind of renewable energy they want, what kind of transition do they want, what are the procurement problems that they face, what are the government related problems or procedural problems that they might face, whether there are policy gaps, whether there are infrastructure gaps, all these things, because of their power, position, and the work that they are doing with us, they have the capacity to inform policy. The other thing that these businesses can do, on the other hand, is to influence the supply chains. So big businesses can definitely influence their supply chains, and that will create a trickling effect of the action that they are taking at that level and the action to go down to the lowermost chain of their supply lines. So in a nutshell, it is it, and how we are working with businesses.
Thank you so much, Divya, for this interesting input. In fact, I think this deserves another dialogue altogether, where we must kind of, and that's what we are planning, another dialogue itself on this whole path of businesses and the matchmaking that we have to do with cities and the interlinkages. So thank you for that very interesting.
And Sally, I would like to just add one example. So Maharashtra State is one of our members of the government campaign, and they have the state EV policies. Several other states have prepared their state EV policies. What we have tried to do is that we have tried to bring our EV100 members, which are businesses that are housed in and around Maharashtra, to work with the state governments together around some of the implementation that they want for their state EV policies, because they can definitely bring a quicker change for the state governments to help get to their targets. So this is just one small example as to how we are trying to do that.
I think that example is very, very helpful for us, so that we understand that along with anything, speed is also very important. I mean, we might have an intent, but if we cannot match it and the emergency that we are talking about, I think if we can work out a good formula to match all this, it will it'll help cities achieve something. And with that, I think I'm running out of time, and I've come to the end of today's discussion. Lot of takeaways today. I think there is a roadmap that we have all placed together for stakeholders, but also for cities, which we will put up, as a slide after this discussion. Thank you all the panelists for being here, and for everyone else who are listening in. Stay tuned on the City Climate Alliance India Climate Dialogues for more such interesting discussions. Thank you so much.